Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuf Tes Vav, Daf 115 of Masechta Pesachim. The Daf begins talking about what bracha do you make on karpas when all you have is romaine lettuce for karpas and maror. So how does the brachas work on that? Eating like Pesach matzah and maror, like all together, Zekher K'mikdash Kehillel. We talk about that. And, alright, some just like dipping the maror in charosas, washing your hands before you dip, things like that. Okay, we're going to start on Daf Kuf Yudalad Amud Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom. Pshita. Heicha de'ika shar yirakis, mevarcha shar yirakis, boi pri adam v'achil, v'adam mevarcha al achilas mar v'achil. Okay. So, if you're going to have for karpas, you're going to have potatoes. And then for maror, you're going to have romaine lettuce. So, that's easy. On the potatoes, you say boi pri adama. You also have in mind the romaine lettuce that you're going to have later. Why do you have to have it in mind if it's going to be after the matzah? I think the pshat is because it's not necessarily, as we know from Masechta Brachas, it's not coming to lafes as a pas. You're not necessarily, maror isn't something that you necessarily generally eat with bread. I think that's why. But whatever it is, you make a boi pri adam on the potatoes, and then later on, when you get to the maror, to the romaine lettuce that you're going to have like as maror, so then you say the bracha of al achilas maror. However, the shaila is, heichadleka elachasa mai. What about when all you have is romaine lettuce? So you can use romaine lettuce for karpas, and also for maror later on. So Amar Rav Huna, Mevarich meikara amar pri ha'adama ve'achil, v'sof mevarich aleh al achilas mar ve'achil. So Rav Huna suggests that during karpas, you say boi pri adama on the romaine lettuce. And then, later on when you get to maror, on that same romaine lettuce, you say the bracha of al achilas maror. Maskeflo Rav Chisda, top of Kuftas Vav Mud Aleph. Rav Chisda asks a kasha. Lachashmili kreso imenu chosum b'varach aleh. So Rav Chisda says, I don't know about this. Meaning what? He's going to eat romaine lettuce as karpas, and he's going to have however much he has, and then he's going to say the bracha of al achilas maror on the same romaine lettuce later on. Kilu, if you're going to eat something, so then you make all the brachas at once. I don't know, like the way I'm imagining it is, for example, I don't know, let's say you're eating, it must be cherry season soon in Eretz Yisrael. Chever, is it cherry season already in Eretz Yisrael? They have the cherries already? It's probably something around now, or maybe like Shesek season. Right? That's when these fruits start coming out in Eretz Yisrael. So let's say like the first time you're going to have cherries or Shesek or something. So you're going to say bracha of boi pri ha'etz and also shechianu. But you say that all like at the same, whatever brachas you're going to make, you make at the beginning. So I think Rav Chisda is basically saying like, why, if you're going to make the bracha of al achilas maror, make it when you're eating it. So therefore, Ela Amar Rav Chisda, rather says Rav Chisda, meikar mevarach aleh boi pri adama ve'al achilas maror ve'achil levasof achil achilas chasa below bracha. So rather Rav Chisda suggests that when you're doing karpas, so you say the bracha of boi pri adam on the romaine lettuce, and that's when you're also going to say the bracha of al achilas maror. And then later on, when you get to maror, so you just pashut eat the maror to eat maror, and so the kids will say, hey, why are we doing this twice, whatever. But in terms of brachas, you're going to do that all at the time that you eat it for the first time, which is during karpas. So in Surya, they would do like Rav Huna, that if all you had was romaine lettuce. Now, I imagine that lemaise, probably almost everyone here, or maybe even everyone here, probably uses different vegetables, which we're going to see in a second. So this shaila isn't really applicable. However, in the event where all you have is romaine lettuce, so in Surya, they would do like Rav Huna, that you would say boi pri adama on the karpas romaine lettuce, and then al achilas maror on the maror romaine lettuce. And Rav Sheshes brei Rav Yeshua, he would do like Rav Chisda, which is that he would say Boi Pri Adama and Alachilas Maror on the karpas Roman lettuce, and then when it comes to maror, he would just eat the Roman lettuce for maror without any special bracha. Bilchsa kavasi Rav Chizda, we say that the halacha is like Rav Chizda in this case. Now Rav Acha Bre de Rava Mahadar Ashar Yerakis Lafuki Nafshim Plugta. Now says the Gemara that Rav Acha Bre de Rava, in order to avoid this machlokas between Rav Huna and Rav Chizda, he would just use different vegetables for karpas and for maror, which I imagine is like what we do. My family, we use potatoes for karpas, and for maror we use we use Roman lettuce, because that's, I think, what's agreed upon as like what maror is. But to be yotzezan from the Alta Haim in Europe, so I don't know, is it a European thing? I don't know, to eat horseradish. So we do a shtick all that, but for some reason the horseradish tends to not be particularly sharp. It just tastes like pretty much nothing, I think. I don't know, you guys have like a trick to like preserve it so you can get real sharp and everything? A few years ago, maybe like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something, my friends, Donnie and Lara Friedenberg, they made this horseradish, which was like really sharp, and it managed to like keep its sharpness for like a long time. Oh my goodness gracious. You take like a little bit too much of that and you feel like your like brain is going to explode, and you're like, it feels like it's never going to end, but then it does, and then you get like a little bit of a rush. Let's go weiter in Shas. Amar Ravina, says Ravina, Amar li Rav Misharsha. Okay, so now this next bit of Gemara, it's like a little funny because it's not complicated per se, but it's borderline, I'd say like entry level confusing. Like there's just a few, I don't know. Let's see, but it's really not hard. It's just, you have to kind of like say, it's just not very clear, I guess. Let's go back to Amar Ravina. It says Ravina, Amar li Rav Misharsha Brei Rav Nosson. So Ravina says that Rav Misharsha Brei Rav Nosson said to him, Hachi Amar Hillel. This is what Hillel said, Mishmei de Gemara, from like a tradition. Now, here's sort of confusing thing number one. And again, it's not confusing. This Hillel is apparently an Amora named Hillel. It's not Hillel. So like when I was learning this, I was like trying to understand like Hillel, because then we're going to see in a few minutes that Hillel, the like, I wouldn't even call him a Tana, like pre-Tana, like Hillel, like from one of the Zugas. So then all of a sudden Hillel comes in. It's like, wait, how can Hillel be saying this if he said that? It's like, no, these are actually two different Hillels, and the first Hillel is actually an Amora. So it's like, first of all, I don't know who's ever heard of the Amora Hillel. So that just like wasn't clear. And then to have him come up in the same place as like the Hillel from the Zugas, it's like, but once you get that this Hillel is the Amora Hillel, well then it's like, okay, well, I get it now. That's easy. So anyway, so this is like thing number one. So Achi Amar Hillel, this is what Hillel the Amora said. Mishmei de Gemara, as from a tradition. Lo nichroch inish matzah umar ba'adei adad v'neichel. Do not wrap matzah and maror together and eat it. Okay? So meaning, eat your matzah, eat your maror, don't eat them together. Mishum desvir lam, because we hold matzah b'zman hazeh d'oraisa maror d'rabanan. Okay? Apparently that's going to be a machlokas in a few days, so don't jump to any conclusions, but the Gemara right now is assuming that matzah nowadays is midoraisa, the mitzvah of achilas matzah on Pesach, on Seder night, whereas achilas maror is d'rabanan b'zman hazeh. Vasimar d'rabanan u'mevatel le matzah d'oraisa, and what's going to happen is if you eat the matzah, which is d'oraisa, together with the maror, which is d'rabanan, so the d'rabanan is going to kind of interfere with the d'oraisa. Kilu, if you have a mitzvah d'oraisa to eat matzah, so eat matzah. Don't also eat it together with maror, which is also d'rabanan. That's going to mess things up. And even according to the Manda Amar, who holds that mitzvahs are unable to be mevatel each other. Therefore, if we would want to apply it to this case, we would basically say, well, the mitzvah of maror cannot annul, or interfere with the mitzvah of matzah. But hanimile d'oraisa b'd'oraisa, d'rabanan b'd'rabanan. That's only when you have two mitzvahs d'oraisa or two mitzvahs d'rabanan. So one can't interfere with the other. But when you have a d'oraisa and a d'rabanan, the d'rabanan can interfere with the deoraisa. And therefore, in this case, if you have matzah, which is a mitzvah, bisman hazeh deoraisa, you have maror, which is only de'abanan, if you eat them together, the maror is going to interfere with the matzah, and you will not be yotzei your chiyuv achilas matzah. Now, period. Let's just hold this space for a second. So I think that kind of stands. I think that the Gemara doesn't argue with that. And therefore, nowadays, we do not eat matzah and maror together, because the maror will interfere with the chiyuv of achilas matzah. Okay. Now, Mantana de Shamisle mitzvos emivatel. So, who is the Mandam who says that mitzvos are unable to be mevatel one another? Hillel, he. So this is the Hillel from the Zugos, right? Hillel and Shammai. So Hillel, he. The Tanya, as we learn in the Brayso, Amar Olav al Hillel, they would say about Hillel, Shayakorchan b'vasa achas, that Hillel would wrap together the matzah, the maror, the korban pesach, all together, ve'ochlan, and eat them. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, matzos morim yochlu, that you eat the korban pesach with matzah and maror, so we eat them all together. Okay, now that was of course during the time of the Beis Hamikdash, as we learned in Masechta Shabbos and Daf Tesvav. We're right now on Kuf Tesvav of Masechta Pesachim, but on Daf Tesvav of Masechta Shabbos we learned that Hillel was the Nasi in Eretz Yisrael 100 years before the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, the second Beis Hamikdash. So Hillel, of course, was during the Beis Hamikdash. So matzah and maror and korban pesach were all deoraisa, and he would wrap them together, and he would have all these mitzvahs, and nothing would interfere with any. No one of them would interfere with any of the others. He would wrap together matzah, maror, korban pesach, and eat them all together. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, cholkan olav chaver val Hillel, that Hillel's contemporaries argue with him, and they say that you would have to eat the matzah, the maror, and the korban pesach separately. Okay, Titania, as we learn in the Brisa. Now here's the next thing, which is like a little bit funny, which is that this Brisa, so Rabbi Yochanan just said that there's a machlokas between Hillel and his contemporaries. Hillel says that mitzvos are not mevatel one another. During the Beis Hamikdash, you could eat together the matzah, the maror, and the korban pesach. Rabbi Yochanan says that Hillel's contemporaries argue on him and say that you cannot eat them together. Mitzvos are mevatel one another, and you would have to eat the pesach, the matzah, and the maror separately. Now, the Gemara brings a brisa that theoretically is going to prove that, but it doesn't actually prove that. It actually, from the brisa alone, we see that the Chachamim agree with Hillel, but say that in addition to eating the matzah, maror, and korban pesach all together, you can also eat them separately. So according to this brisa, they don't necessarily disagree. Well, meaning they agree with Hillel that you can eat them all together, but they add to that and say that you don't only have to eat them together, you can also eat them separately. So now, whereas Rabbi Yochanan says that they actually argue and say, no, you cannot eat them together, you have to eat them separately. Titania, as we learn in the brisa, is it possible that you would be able to wrap together the pesach, the matzah, and the maror all together, v'ochlan, and eat them k'derech shehillel ochlan, in the same way that Hillel would eat them? Tamulomar, therefore it says, amatzos morim yochlu, afilu zeh b'fnei atzmo v'zeh b'fnei atzmo. Therefore, it says, amatzos morim yochlu, that you'll eat the korban pesach with matzah and maror, and they want to learn out from yochluhu that it means even if they are separate. So now, the wording of the brisa is a little bit funny. So now, Maskef Rav Ashi. Now Rav Ashi asks a kasha on the brisa. Yochimai afilu. If this is the case, then what does it mean afilu? Because on the one hand, the reisha of the brisa is saying, is it possible that Hillel is correct that you eat them all together? Therefore, it says no, amatzos morim yochlu. But then it doesn't say that teaches that you dafka don't eat them all together. You have to eat them separately. It says you can even eat them separately, which then sounds like they're actually agreeing with what Hillel is saying. Anyways, Ella Amar Rav Ashi, rather Rav Ashi explains the brayse in the following way. Ella Amar Rav Ashi, Haitana Achi Katani, this is what it's saying. Yachol lo yetze bu yidei chavasu ele im kein korchan b'vachas achas v'ochlan k'derech shel ochlan. Is it possible that the only way to do it is like Hillel did it? That you have to wrap together the pesach, the matzah, and the maror? Talmud Omer, amatzos morim yochlu afilu zeh b'fnei atzmo v'zeh b'fnei atzmo. Therefore it says that you eat the korban pesach, amatzos morim, even if they are separate. Okay, so according to this reading, what it means is that is it possible that Hillel's way of eating the Korban Pesach with the matzah and the maror all together is the only way to eat the Korban Pesach? Therefore, it says matzah sumarim yuchlu, which they want to learn out, means no, you can even eat them separately. Now, according to Rav Ashi, so this brisa reads nicely, but the thing is that according to Rav Ashi, the Chachamim essentially agree with Hillel that you can eat them all together, but they say that you can even eat them separately as well, whereas Rabbi Yochanan wanted to say that Hillel and the Chacham Taka argue, that Hillel says that you eat them all together, Chacham say no you don't, you eat them separately. Okay, so now, Beseder. But additionally, something to keep in mind is that this is Bizman Beis HaMikdash. Hillel was alive during the Beis HaMikdash. This is when Matzah and Maror and Korban Pesach, everything's Deoraisa. Now, we had said initially that nowadays, Maror is Derabanan, and even according to Hillel, who says the mitzvahs are not mevatel each other because you can eat them all together, that's only if everything's Deoraisa or everything's Derabanan. But nowadays, Maror, we want to assume for now, Maror is Derabanan, Matzah is Deoraisa. So if that's the case, no matter what, you're not going to be able to wrap them all together. Right? But now the Gemara says, well, now that it's not clear if the halacha is like Hillel or like the Rabbanon, Mivarch al achilas matzav v'adar, I'm sorry, Mivarch al achilas matzav v'achil, v'adar mivarch al achilas mar v'achil, v'adar achil matzav v'chasa b'hadei adad b'lo bracha zeichel mikdash kehilel. So what you do is, first, you make the bracha of al achilas matzah and eat the matzah. Then you make the bracha of al achilas mar and eat the mar. I.e., you eat them separately, okay? And then you eat them all together and Zekher mikdash kehilel. It sounds like that might be assuming like the way that Rav Ashi understands the brisa, which is that the Chacham actually don't argue with, don't throw away what Hillel said, but they actually amend it and they say, look, feed all the birds with all the seeds, and first eat them separately, and then you can also eat them all together. Although I guess Hillel wouldn't agree with eating them separately. But we don't know if the Ahuda halacha is like. So basically we feed all the birds with all the seeds, and we eat them separately, we eat them together, we do everything. But Bisman Hazeh, you wouldn't be allowed, seemingly from the Gemara, you would not be, right, this whole machlokes between Hillel and the Chacham is when the Beis HaMikdash is around and everything's D'oraisa. Bisman Hazeh, Mar is D'Rabbanan, or at least the assumption is for now. And therefore you cannot eat the matzah and the maror together because the maror is going to interfere with the mitzvah D'oraisa of matzah. Anyways, so what I was saying about this Gemara is like, it's not complicated. It's not like tzitz miratze and tuma hutra b'tzibur versus the chuya b'tzibur and Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. It's not like that, but it's also not particularly clear. There's like moving pieces that are not very clearly defined. So like, but I guess if you just kind of stick with the main bits, which are that Bisman Hazeh, if we assume that maror is derabanan, certainly you cannot wrap it together with the matzah if we assume the matzah is deoraisa. When the Beis HaMikdash was around and everything was deoraisa, so then Hillel says that you would wrap them all together. Well, this is where it gets complicated, because according to Rabbi Yochanan, the Chacham disagree and say that you have to eat them separately, whereas Rav Ashi seems to be saying that actually, maybe you can, in addition to eating them together, you can eat them separately. I think I just said the Chacham say you have to eat them together, but I meant the Chacham say you have to eat them separately. Anyways, oy vavoy. So it is a shtickle spaghetti, but just like random pieces you have to remember, but again, not complicated stuff per se. Amar Belazo, Amar Boshaya, Kol shetibulo b'mashke tzarich netilas yadayim. Okay. It says Rabbi Elazar in the name of Rabbi Boshaya that whenever you dip something in mashke, in liquids, so then you have to wash your hands first, because as we learned in Masechta Brachos in the 8th parak, that your hands, stam yadayim shnei osein, and they'll touch the mashke, make them midrabanan or rishon, it'll be matame, other things. So therefore, if ever you're going to be dipping something in liquids, and now the liquid can touch your hand and get into this whole situation, so just wash your hands first, and that's enough, and then and then you can touch whatever the heck you want. Amar Rav Papa Shmamina, says Rav Papa. So what do we see from here? So it must mean that the maror that we're eating, to be outside the mitzvah of maror, you're going to be dipping in charoses. Mishum kafa, because of the bugs, the worms. So the charoses will kill the worms. Alright? Because if it enters your mind that you don't need to dip the maror into anything, well then why do I have to wash netilas yadayim? So halonoga, well, you're not touching any liquids or anything. So rather it must be that you have to taka dip the maror in charosas. But one second, maybe I'll say that you taka don't need to dip the maror in anything. And the worms are just going to die on their own from the smells. From the smell of what? Maybe the smell of the charosas? Yeah, let's say that. Even if you don't dip it. So they'll die from, the smell of the charosas. But if that's the case, that you don't have to dip the maror in charosas, then why do I have to wash my hands? Well, in case you end up dipping it. Okay, so you don't have to dip it, but you can dip it. Alright. Amar Papa lo nishe inish maror b'charosas, says Papa, a person shouldn't let the maror hang out in the charosas for too long, because dilma agav chalye de tavlin mivatale marore uvinan tamar veleko. So Papa says don't take your maror and put it into the charosas for too long, because maybe the pungency of the charosas will counter the pungency of the maror, and we want maror to be bitter. We have to have it right. It says va'inan tamar veleko. You need the flavor of the maror. That's the whole point. Va'imaru es chayim. We want to eat maror and experience the bitter flavor, so that we remember the bitterness in Egypt. And therefore, if you put the maror in the charosas for too long, it could counteract that bitterness, which would basically render the activity less useful. Adbirei Rav Chizda l'Ravna Ukva v'darash. So now Rav Chizda expounded to Ravna Ukva, notol yodav b'tibul rishon, notol yodav b'tibul sheni. Okay, if a person washed his hands to eat the karpas, so he nonetheless washes his hands a second time to eat the maror later on. Amur Rabbanon Kamen to Rav Papa. Now the rabbis said this teaching over before Rav Papa. Haba'alma itmar, and they figured this statement must have actually been said not in the context of the Seder, but rather in general, during the week, a regular day. If you're going to dip twice, so even though you dipped for the first time, you still dip for the second time. You still even though you wash for the first time, you wash for the second time. Because if it enters your mind that it's talking about the Seder, how come I need to wash my hands twice? He already washed his hands once. So these students who were before Papa wanted to assume that this statement that says that if you wash your hands for the first dipping, you have to wash your hands for a second dipping, so then that must be just in general. During the week, a regular week, that you don't assume that you're going to be dipping twice, and therefore after, when you end up dipping the second time, so you didn't have intention the first time, so if you got to wash the second time. But if it's at the Seder, what's the big deal? Why should I have to wash a second time? What am I doing at the end? All I'm doing is just sitting at the Seder table and saying the Seder, if I already washed my hands once, why do I have to do it again? Well, saying the Agada. Says Rav Papa, no, it actually is talking about the Seder. Because if you think that it's actually talking about just a regular old weekday, well then why would I be dipping twice? That's the whole thing. At the Seder, that's part of the Manishtana, we dip twice. So elamai, so rather, we're going to say that the statement is talking about at the Seder, that even though you washed your hands for karpas, you nonetheless wash your hands again for maror. But if that's the case, then why do I need to wash my hands twice? I already washed it for karpas. Why should I have to do it for maror? So the Gemara answers, well, because between the first washing for karpas and the second washing for maror, you had the whole Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim in the middle. Maybe you weren't paying attention to where your hands are going, and maybe you touched something dirty, and maybe your hands became shnios l'tumah, whatever it is, and therefore wash again before the maror, just in case while you were doing Sipur Yitzias Mitzrayim, your hands became Stam Yodayim Shnios L'Tuma again. Okay, so Rav Papa explains that at the Seder, you wash for Karpas, and then you also wash for Mar. Now, Lemaise, we wash for the Matzah, right? Meaning, we have Matzah in the Seder, and then we have Mar, so we just washed for the Matzah, so I think that also works for the Mar as well. Omer Rava says, Rava Bala Matzah Yotza, if a person Pashit swallows Matzah, he doesn't chew it, he doesn't experience the flavors, he just swallows it. Balamar lo, so it's okay, Yotza. Balamar lo Yotza, but if you do the same with Mar, if you don't experience the bitterness of the Mar, you just swallow it, so then lo Yotza. He's not Yotze. Balamatza umar, if you swallowed together matzah and mar, yidei matzah yotze, yidei mar lo yotze, so he's Yotze for the matzah, he's not Yotze for the mar, because we said that you're allowed to swallow the matzah, but you're not allowed to swallow the mar, ki'ilu, without chewing it. If you wrap it up in some kind of wrapping and then you swallow all of it, so then you're not even Yotze for the matzah. So we say if you eat matzah but you don't, chew it and stuff, you just kind of swallow it, that's okay. If you soften it up somehow, I guess. But if you wrap it up, let's say you eat like a matzah pill. You take matzah and you put it in a pill and you swallow the pill or something. So you're not even going to be Yotze matzah in that way. You have to at least, have the matzah in your mouth. Okay? Amr of Shimi bar Ashi, matzah lifnei kol echad ve'echad, mar lifnei kol echad ve'echad, v'charosas lifnei kol echad ve'echad, ve'en okunes ha'shochan el lifnei misha omer haggadah. Who could tell me what that means? It's very interesting. This goes back to, as we know already from 1,000,000 years ago, that the way that they would eat at that time was that everybody would kind of sit on their own bed, and there would be a table in front of them. And that's what we're talking about. So we're saying, Amr of Shimi bar Ashi, Matzah lifnei kol echad ve'echad. So you have each person lying on their bed, and they have a table in front of them, and each person's table has matzah. Mar lifnei kol echad ve'echad. Each table has mar. B'achrosas lifnei kol echad ve'echad. And each table has charoses. Ve'nokenes ha'shochan el lifnei misha omer haggadah. Now, this concept of somebody who leads the Seder apparently goes back a long time. And we're saying that we only remove the table from the person who's saying the Haggadah. So everybody on their own personal tables has matzah, mar, and charoses. However, this peculiar act of picking up the table and moving it somewhere else so that the children will ask, hey, why are you doing that? That would only be done to the table of the person who's leading the Haggadah. Leading the Seder. Ravuna Omer says, Ravuna Kulunami Lifnei Misha Omer Haggadah. Says Ravuna, actually all those things are only in front of the person who's leading the Seder. So you don't necessarily need an individual table for each person with matzah, mar, and charoses. Only the person leading the Seder would get those inyanim, and then we would also move away the table at a certain point so that the children will ask, why'd you do that? Vilchsak Ravuna, the halacha is like Ravuna. Lama okunis hashochan, how come we move the table somewhere else? Amr dver b'yaneh k'dei she'yakiru tinokos v'yishalu, so that the children will notice and ask, why'd you do that? Abaye Yosef kami de Rabba. Abaye was sitting before Rabba. Chazu de kamadle taka mikame, and Abaye noticed that, hey, they just moved the table away from Rabba. Amr, he said to them, Adayin lo ka'ach linon. Abaye says, I don't understand. We didn't eat yet. Why are you getting rid of the table? Omer le Rabba partatan milomar manishtana, and Rabba says, the shkoyach, we don't need to sing the manishtana anymore. You just did that for us by asking, how come you moved the table? And we're going to see tomorrow, the Maaseh, that the manishtana is already in the Mishnayos. We're going to get to Manishtana tomorrow. We're going to stop here. Now, I wonder if that story with Abaye, Abaye grew up in Rabba's house. So maybe Abaye was a very young child. Maybe this was when Abaye was young. So then he Mamish did what we can only hope children would do, is Mamish ask the questions that we want them to ask, which is, how come you moved that table? We didn't even eat yet, etc. Mamish Kedei Sheishalu. Now, that was Daf Kuf Tes Vav. I think it was a fun daf, enjoyable daf. There's a little bit of that unclear bit in the middle, but I think that the takeaways are there. So we started off by saying the bracha on karpas when all you have is romaine lettuce. So if all you have is romaine lettuce and you have to use it for the karpas and you also have to use it for the maror, so we have machlokus between Rav Huna and Rav Chizda. Rav Huna says that on the karpas you would say beri priya adama, and then when you eat that same romaine lettuce later for maror, you would say alachilas maror. Rav Chizda disagrees and says that you would say beri priya adama and alachilas maror on the romaine lettuce that you're eating for your karpas, and then later on you would eat the romaine lettuce without a bracha for maror, because you already said the brachas earlier. And then I think it was Rav Achaber the Rava said, look, Lemaisa, if you could just eat different vegetables for karpas and for maror, you can avoid this question. We discussed eating the matzah and the maror together. So we said, look, Lemaisa nowadays, the Gemara wants to assume for now that matzah is midoraisa, maror is derabanan, and therefore you can't eat a deraisa and a derabanan together. The derabanan is going to mess up your ability to be yotzei the deraisa properly. So therefore, do not wrap together the matzah and the maror and eat them together. But as we're going to see at the end, we end up doing everything together. First we do the matzah separately, the maror separately, and then we do them all together. Zekher lemikdash kehilel. Fine. Now we see that when the Beis Hamikdash was around, so Hillel Taka would wrap everything together, the Pesach, the Matzah, the Maror. Rabbi Yochanan says that the rabbis would argue and say that no, you would keep them separate. Do the Pesach separately, the Matzah separately, the Maror separately. Rav Ashri might possibly hold that the Rabbanan agree with Hillel that you could do it all together, but that you can also even do it separately. And we said in the end that we eat them separately first, and then we do Zekher Mikdash Kehilel, Zekher Mikdash Kehilel after we've eaten them separately. We discussed washing your hands before you dip. So if ever you're going to be dipping things into liquids, so you should wash your hands first in order to remove the stam yodayim shniosein. And we discussed at the end mounting the we also said over there that you should dip your maror in charoses as well. And we also discussed moving the table at a certain place. Now, Rashbam actually pointed out there that moving the table was more of a thing then when you had these small tables in front of people, because it was much easier to move a table. Now, if you have a big table, you're not really going to be able to move that. What you do is you're going to probably move the Seder plate. I think at some point you remove it from the table, so that the kids will ask. And we had that nice little story with Abaye, who took the bait, and he asked Rabbah, how come you moved the Seder plate? All right, Chevra, I hope you enjoyed Daf Kuf Tesvav. Have a great day. Peace out.